All right.
Thanks
We're back.
thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
We are back. We didn't work on an intro script, but here we are on the Crescent Method. I'm Scott, and this is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
The last couple weeks, we've been doing the basics, and we were going to do another basics tonight, but we figured we would talk a little bit more about some of our master classes, which are coming back around starting next week. So August 26th will be the next round of the what we call the Crescent Method basic training, which is a group setting of what we do in our consulting work. And it's our aim and intention to take the lessons that we've learned in our consulting work with literally some of the largest farms on the planet doing living soil biological methods. We've done some salt-based stuff as well, but we're mostly known for living soil. And we created these master classes so that we could be more accessible to the smaller farmers or those of us that are feeling the crunch during this wild time of whatever you want to call it. But nonetheless, what we're seeing in our master classes is the group setting is leading to a better understanding of the concepts. And, obviously we are big fans of our consulting work, and that's never going to stop, but we are really genuinely enjoying the masterclass settings and what's coming from that. And it really is an enjoyable process. Excuse me. And we wanted to talk a little bit about that today. So like I said, our next masterclass, which is we take a farmer from start to finish of doing the analysis,
tracking the microbes and the minerals throughout the entire process, and being able to see how those labs contribute to the way that we guide decisions in the space. So.
Right. And I think one of the interesting things that's kind of come up in conversation about what it is we're doing here is the concept of pest management. And, we talk a lot about not spraying and choosing when you should spray and if that even makes sense. And I think, we've been fairly candid with how we take that approach. We've mentioned some things. We cover all of it in the master classes in our consulting work, and we've been slowly trying to distill it down into the basic series, of which we've done the last 2 weeks. And so we wanted to try and be just a little bit more succinct and clear about what it is that we do that we call the Crescent Method, which it is kind of unique. And we wanted to be different than no-till or just regenerative or K&F or what have you. And so we decided to call it something different because up to this point it was a different approach. And so it needed to be defined in some other way. And so generally speaking, how we approach all problems in the cultivation space is through taking different data points. We come from the Soil Food Web School of Medicine, or whatever you'd want to call it, the Dr. Lane University. And we will always put the microscope assessment as the first tool and the first line of defense in any decision that we make. And
just having that mindset of actually tracking the microbes, seeing how what you're doing in the space is affecting them is very important because it shapes everything. It shapes all of our decisions, and we know that when we hurt them, it's not going to go well for the plant. So,
right.
And that's what we're all after. So.
Well, our thinking behind it is if you can use a microscope to analyze soil organisms, those are biological animals. And if your plant is a biological organism or animal, you can get an earlier warning or indication as to if the decision you're making in the cultivation or farming space will have a downstream negative effect to your plant. So by simply taking a test tube full of compost extract, for example, and putting a drop or two of a product, nutrient, pesticide, or anything that you intend to use in the cultivation space, you can tell within 20 to 30 minutes if this compound is going to be beneficial and stimulatory to biological life, or is it going to be outright detrimental to biological life.
Yeah.
And so that's first and foremost.
Yes.
We will always go to that tool first.
Yep.
I think where we're fairly unique, save for a couple people like Nick Tomasini, most people are in one camp or the other and tend to not be interested in the other camp's point of view. And we dove headfirst into biology And then as soon as we got that foundational principle taken care of and a good functional professional working knowledge of the matter, we then jumped headfirst into soil chemistry and liquid nutrition, and we just keep adding layers of the important components of a healthy agricultural activity.
Yes.
Would you say that was kind of a
Yeah.
succinct?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. All right. Well, that was a great episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We got any Q&A? No, I'm just playing. But yeah, we do have some master classes coming up. The first one coming up is August 26th, which will be what we call the Crescent Method basic training, when we take you from start to finish through our consulting process. Yeah. We do mineral analysis, biological analysis, fertilizer recipe, or what we call nutrient formulation. So we give you recipes of vegetative transition, flowering, foliar feeding recipes. We help you analyze and interpret your water tests. We help you analyze and interpret your soil chemistry reports. And we help you analyze, interpret, really, your entire process. And we do that in a group setting, which we think is pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, and we take the time to go into depth into each one of the components. So, we break it down by component. So, we'll go into the microbial component first, and we give you an overview of why we're doing what we're doing with the microbes, and specifically what each of their roles are and how that contributes to the different inoculants that we'll use and other things that we use, how that steers the space. But you need to come away with an understanding of why it is you're doing what you're doing, so that when you come into contact with different scenarios, you can start to troubleshoot when, outside of the classroom. So we go into each one in depth. So microbes is first, and then, the overall method is first, and then second is the microbes, then the minerals, and we go into some depth on that and why we do what we do, why we choose the minerals that we do, some information about the balances that we're after with that component of the method, and then finally we go into the nutritional component of the class, so that you can understand how it is that we feed the whole system, the soil, the microbes, and the plants. So that's the whole point of the class, is to really train you into the overall method itself, give you the background of the information that you need to know as a grower in order to be successful and to make decisions in your grow in the field, so that you can understand what it is you're doing and why you're getting the results that you are. And then it just comes with all of the testing that you need in order to track the lab work that will just inform you in making those decisions. And so then we all learn together, and we go over the different information from each of you together, and then we learn together in the different contexts. We've had people that obviously grow cannabis in the class. We've had some vegetable growers, some market gardeners. We've had some vineyards and different things, and orchards in the class as well. So it's not necessarily just a cannabis class. But it tends to be the biggest. It tends to be the biggest draw. Yep, that's true. That's true. So, heads up to you veggie growers. There's going to be a lot of cannabis personnel in there. So personnel,
which I still think is some of the most educated farmers on the planet.
Absolutely.
So we rock with you.
Yes.
So this session we're going to keep a little bit short. We wanted to be available for just kind of random Q&A. So for those of you that are listening along live, you got some questions, start dropping them now. We're just going to talk a little bit about some other concepts and get right into some of the questions.
But real quick, the Crescent Method basic training class, we have two that are open right now. The basic training class starts next Friday, which is August 26th. At 3 p.m. and it will run for 5 weeks every Friday at 3 p.m. Everything is recorded as well, including the Q&As. So if you happen to miss a class, that will be recorded and available for you. And then the following week is when we introduce and start our microscope masterclass. So this particular masterclass is geared toward growers. I've taken the information on how we, identify microbes and quantify them and put it into like a qualitative type of analysis, so that you learn how to use the microscope, You learn how to identify the organisms. We take each organism group one by one, and then we start making the assessments. And we just categorize, do I have enough of them? Am I just under? Am I severely deficient? Or am I grossly over? Or am I exceptional? And those are really just the buckets and categories that you need to know, like, do I have enough of these things, these organisms that I'm after in the grow? And that can just guide you as to whether or not you're being successful. You should see, an increase in all of the beneficial organisms, and you should see a decrease in all the non-beneficial organisms. And so it's just training your eye in a classroom setting and then going over a live assessment with me at the end. Then you can get an idea of how I actually do this and put all these moving parts and pieces together. And then, of course, there's the forum for both classes, and then you can ask questions and, take pictures of whatever organism you're trying to identify and just different things like that. So that class starts the following week on a Thursday, September 1st, also at 3 p.m. and also runs for 5 weeks as well. So.
And I think one of the coolest parts about the microscope class that Sarah's created is, the full, what we would call the quantitative assessment, which we use the spreadsheet and you calculate biomass. That's a pretty long journey for getting that technique down. And the first thing that I started providing for farmers was microscope training. That was one of the very first things I would do when I would go to a farm, is usually try to teach them how to use the microscope. And within a couple hours, most people, you could get them up to speed with identifying a ciliate or an omycete, or at least kind of the more problematic things. But that was fairly limiting in what value that could provide to the farmer. And so the purpose of this microscope class is, if you have a microscope and you can come for 6 to 8 weeks and fling yourself at this, you should be able to come away with a functional use of that microscope to analyze your cultivation space very similarly to what we do. And so this would be a qualitative assessment, which puts it into 5 groups of 5 groups? 5 groups.
1, 2, 3, 4 groups.
4 groups.
4 groups.
4 groups of excellent to danger zone. And we're finding that that's pretty gosh darn effective. So the microscope class is to get you up to where you can actually use this microscope as a tool, not just casually look at things moving around, and you can start to dissect your farm in the ways that we've dissected many farms.
Decision making. You need to be able to make decisions.
Decision making.
About what you've, what you're doing in the field, in the grow. Is that helpful? Is that detrimental?
Right.
And get a feel for, what are the microbes telling you? Get a read on them and get a feel for that viewpoint.
Yeah.
So.
And the intention of the master class, where we meet in a setting, is to give you all the benefits in a group setting that we provide on our one-on-one consulting, which is something that's been asked of us for a while. And so everybody gets access to our discussion forum for up to a year, and we help you with everything. So we're really looking forward to people joining in on that. We've had great success with the previous classes. And a primary goal for us is to teach you the process of moving away from using pesticides and fungicides to using other tools of analytics and nutritional management to solve those same problems. Yes. That's the essence of what we do. Yep. So just to kind of clarify. So we're starting to get some questions come in. Let's go ahead and jump in on those. Do we have any experience on using the OA Organics Alive products and foliars on vegetable production? Yeah, we do. I think one of the funnest examples we had was in what was that, 2018 or something? There was a little market garden in Santa Barbara, and they had grown some lettuce, and they were just stuck. They had not moved past a certain point, and so we whipped up kind of a general idea of what we do, but lower strength for vegetables, and sprayed them. We got a photo of it somewhere on a phone or something, and an extract, and those things like tripled in size. Well, it triggered the growth. It was hilarious.
What was funny is that I wasn't using a very good marker, shall we say, and so you could very clearly tell which plants I affected and which plants I missed.
We'll have to dig that one up.
So yeah.
And the next day, the farmer's like, "What in the hell did you do?" And we're like, "We gave it some foliars." He's like, "What is foliars?" And it was on from there. So yeah, we absolutely do. We take the same exact approach. We always take a full fertility approach, meaning we are providing a solution that has calcium, magnesium, potassium, nitrogen, trace minerals in the appropriate ratio for the stage of life, which is what we teach in our master class on how to do. And we just do a more dilute. Cannabis can really gobble down some nutrients, and so you can get fairly aggressive with cannabis. And so for food crops, you just back her down a little bit.
Except for your tomatoes. They love that. They love it pretty ramped up. They're heavy feeders, so.
There's a lot of people that come from the tomato world that say cannabis will be a piece of cake.
Yeah, that's true.
That doesn't tend to transfer, but
No.
if you've grown cannabis,
No.
tomatoes are a piece of cake.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
That would. So, yeah, so if you got some more questions, drop them in the chat. In the meantime, we're going to talk a little bit about how we approach a pest management problem when we come onto a farm. When we come onto a farm, especially nowadays, if it's cannabis, it's pretty common for people to be spraying 1, 2, 3, 4 different products. We have people now using rubbing alcohol-based products that are adding more rubbing alcohol. Other people will use one product 2, 3, 4, 5 times per week. And for us, the first step is identifying where is the dysfunction that's leading to the desire to spray multiple times per week. So the first thing that we do is get some data points. We do a soil chemistry test. First and foremost, we do a biological analysis of that soil. We find that most bug problems are predominantly a biological matter. You can absolutely create a pest problem with excessive nitrogen and excessive potassium or deficient calcium, but you can most certainly create every bug problem through a biological imbalance. And we make the assertion that the degree to which that biological balance is off will line up with certain types of pests.
Yeah.
And that gets a lot of resistance from most farming communities, but over time, I think people will understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So the first step is we need to determine what is the most out of balance that needs to be correct and make that correction.
Yeah. So for instance, a lot of people will say it's just the biology that's out of whack. We were treating some roses the other day in our neighbor's yard, and we knew that the mineral component was way out of whack, as you could see it. And then the roses, as roses do, get a whole lot of powdery mildew all over them, and they're full of aphids, and it's just a hot mess. So we gave it a couple. 2 extracts. I actually foliar sprayed with some silica. That helped. And I also foliar sprayed with our compost tea. And those did help. But what really turned the tide, literally, is after doing all that and not seeing any change like we typically do, and knowing that the minerals were out of whack, we waited a couple of weeks. We treated the soil with half the dose of the minerals that it needed, just half, to see the effect. And literally, we got about this much or more growth on those roses, like a line had been drawn in the sand. Everything below that still had powdery mildew. Everything above that was absolutely healthy, and we were flowering out again. All these roses again. So,
which they seem to be pretty done for the season. It was getting hot.
Yeah, but to your point is getting to the cause of what is the major deficiency actually hindering this plant from being healthy. And likely with these roses, it was all those things, but it didn't start shifting the tide until we put the mineral component, until we started correcting that component.
Which was a good moment for us, because it shows us why the mineral camp says it's all about the minerals.
Yeah.
It was clearly a dramatic impact,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But our stance is that this is a holistic system that needs every aspect managed.
Yes.
You need to manage soil chemistry. You need to manage soil organism communities appropriate for the plant that you're trying to grow or the ecosystem you're trying to develop. It's our opinion that you also should manage some sort of fertility. We don't believe in just watering the soil in any sort of commercial operation.
Yeah.
We brought the dog with us today, and he's like tripping out.
Aw.
We had a busy day, so we didn't get as much time as we normally do, so we bring the dog with us. But anyways.
It's a more of a whole systems approach. So
Yeah.
the way that we manage it is really by addressing
Yeah.
all the components that are needed that cause the issue or the imbalance in the system, and we bring that up to
This dude's tripping out. We'll just say what's up. What's up, doggos? Hey. Hey. He just wants to see what's going on. Anyways, carry on, sir.
Yeah, so it's a whole systems approach. A whole systems approach. So we address it all, and we're trying to raise all ships, and because we like to go fast and get we're going for the Yankee Stadium,
Yeah,
so
man. We're trying to win.
aren't we all really in the end going for Yankee Stadium? So
Well, I don't really care for the Yankees, but I'm going for the Major Leagues. So
You get what I'm saying.
not a Yankees fan. But
yeah.
we like to be the underdogs. Maybe like the Oakland Athletics in the Moneyball era. But anyways, he gets on base, kids. He gets on base. So I said all that to say this.
Okay.
What are we talking about, Sarah? We got a dog in here. This show's falling apart.
It's getting crazy.
It's getting crazy.
All right, here's with your questions. Whatever you got, just
If you got
lay it
them
on
out
the
there.
table and
Hopefully the
see
stream
what-
is still going.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really what we're trying to do. We are trying to
Yeah,
Yeah.
silica can be very effective against powdery mildew. We've actually seen it be more effective in a lot of cases than compost tea when we're doing side-by-side trials. And again, this gets back to the nutritional component of what it is that we're doing. So if you really, really want to move that needle, you really need to address the mineral and nutritional component that's missing from a lot of these soils. That's in native soils, that's in engineered soils. You really need to pay attention to those other components. Nature doesn't operate in isolation, so every variable counts. All of these elements it sees out in nature, and it should be seeing the microbial component as well, and they work hand in hand. Remember, all of these nutrients are actually foods for the microbes. Some of these nutrients are actually produced from microbes like vitamins and B vitamins and things like that. So, it's all hand in hand, and it's just raising all ships so that we get the highest medicinal compounds from our crops, and that's what we're after.
that's the
And,
only thing I'm after.
Yeah, and soil regeneration is the crux of all of that. So how to manage these three components is very important to achieving that goal.
Because a three-legged stool never wobbles, but a one-legged stool always falls over.
Yes.
Is kind of the thing that we've learned. And so in order for that, you need to manage these components. And we want to teach you how to do it. And that teaching lesson is coming up. I guess we should talk about it. So the silica, I kind of popped this up there without much answer, but this is the silica we've been using.
Yep.
Comes from the same manufacturer, the Provita. It is a fermented product, but does not have biology in it, just to be clear. What's interesting about all the products from this manufacturer is their uptake. They take an extremely scientific approach. And what's cool about this product is it can be added at any time to the tank. So potassium silicate, most people put it in the beginning. If you put it in towards the end, you get coagulation, I guess would it be. If you really dial the mineral balance of that feed, you can put the AgSil in at different locations, but that's usually too complicated. The nice thing about this silica is you could use it at any time. We've done some pretty impressive trials with it on powdery mildew management, which you're not supposed to make claims about nutrients. So we're going to be real careful making claims about powdery mildew, but of the 4 things we tried, it was the most effective. So that's pretty cool. We've had some of our clients using it for a while, and we've just started carrying it in the store. So I dropped a link in the chat. I'll put it in the description as well. Pretty cool product. Really, really use really low application rates. And we use like 1 milliliter per gallon. So really highly available, and the uptake is pretty remarkable. So yeah, this is the problem for everybody right there.
Can't find it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a guy named Eli. I don't know.
In the Northeast?
Yeah. Well, it's Alabama, I think, but that's at least closer than
Yeah.
California. So, so let's answer 2 questions first.
Yeah.
So I think the main component of this question is local compost is important. It's important to have organisms that are local to your environment. Having said that, the compost that we make in Southern California works everywhere. It's provided a great value in every environment we've put it, but we did go through great lengths to have as diverse as organisms would survive in our environment. So we went all the way up and down the coast of California. We went through the redwood forest, we went through the desert, we went through the pine trees, we went everywhere to build that original inoculum. And we find that good biologically complete compost will provide benefit anywhere. Now, on top of that, if you've got some that was made in your region, yeah, that's going to be a certain element better. But I think what's really not helping the movement is there are certain advisors saying that my compost from California will not benefit you in the Northeast, and that's completely untrue. So as of now, we have our compost that's being produced in Southern California, you have Catalyst that's being produced in Northern California, and you have Eli who's producing it in Alabama. And all three of us, I have worked very intimately with Dr. Lane. All three are extremely capable of producing that material. Obviously, I feel that mine's the best, or else I wouldn't be doing this. We were at least the first. That's got to be worth something. Yeah, and so it works everywhere. We've not seen a situation where we shipped it to a certain environment and they said nothing happened. That's not happened once. Now, do every single species of that original material survive? Probably not. But there's always something in there that makes it. Yeah. And, one of the classes we teach is a compost class so that people can
make it for yourself.
Yep. We will happily sell it to you as long as you need it, but we are about the empowerment movement.
Yeah. Fall is a great time also to learn how to make compost. Things are winding down in the garden, you're tearing down things, and it's a good time to start composting and learning these things. If you do thermal composting, if you do thermal composting, eventually, if you don't get it right the very first try, eventually you'll be able to make compost within a couple months. If you do bioreactor compost and you don't necessarily need it to be organically certified, and it's just like for you, then you can be done in as early as like 6 months. If you're doing worm composting, I would plan on 6 months to a year. If you're doing static composting, which means you're just doing a lasagna layered, no turn, that kind of composting, then you can plan on like a year. So, I would at least start a static pile going now, and then a year from now you'll be golden, or at least start it in the spring, and then you'll have it for the fall prep, something like that. But remember that anytime you do composting, you've got to add enough water to it. Nothing happens without water. Things do not break down. You don't get that microbial component humming if you don't keep the water going. So whatever compost you do, you've got to address that on a regular basis. So.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we got you covered, you know. So there's our dog Otto. We brought him to the office today. Okay. There's a question about the silica. Yeah, it's a really remarkable product. Like, obviously, I'm proud of it because we're carrying it, but let it be known, like, these are some of the highest quality products manufactured on the entire planet for the agricultural space. They got boring labels that aren't designed for retail because they're not used for retail. This stuff is sold in tankers to some of the largest farms on the planet.
We're working on it, though.
Yeah, we're working on it, and we've just formed a relationship with the manufacturer of it, and he's allowed us graciously to use his products in our consulting work and now offer them to y'all in small containers. And so I love the shit. I mean, I'm an extreme fan of this manufacturer of products. You could add it to the Phyloscape regimen. I would just be mindful of what else is in there from a silica standpoint. I haven't used the Phyloscape in a while. I do think it's a fantastic thing, and Sam did a phenomenal product. I'm starting to wonder if Southern Oregon Soil is an employee because he asks about it every single time, but we'll give you a shout out one more time. The Phyloscape program, available from Soilscape Solutions in Arcata, is badass shit. And I don't know what's in it for silica in the most recent program. I would, every chance I get, choose this Silicic over potassium silicate, even though we use potassium silicate all the time. So I choose to use my potassium silicate as a soil amendment. I choose to use this as a soil nutrition ingredient and a foliar ingredient. It goes a long way. It's It's an extremely high quality product. Don't know what else to say about it. We did some powdery mildew trials on some grapes a few years ago, and it was undeniably the most effective treatment,
yeah.
which was kind of hard to swallow because we also did we also did a compost tea treatment. We also did,
and it did have some effect.
It
did have
did,
some
yeah.
effect, but not nearly to the level that the
Silicic nuked the shit.
Yeah.
Like, it was hard to swallow, I'm not gonna lie, because we did tea plus packaged bacteria. We did tea. We did Sil Matrix, which is a potassium silicate fungicide, and then we did Silicic. And the farmer called us and was like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
Big fan of the Phyloscape program. We've just gotten so good with our other tools, we're able to hit the same numbers. The only real advantage, not the only real advantage, a unique advantage that's a very good advantage of the Phyloscape program is it allows you to fine tune. So you can really do some, I think that's way above most people's ability, but it is there. Yeah. So I think that's cool. There's a question about frequency and timing of our classes. So the Crescent Method basic training is by far the most labor-intensive thing for us because we do every aspect for all members that we do for our consulting. So we kind of...
The mineral recommendations, the recipes, the bioassays, all that stuff for everybody.
Kind of doubles or triples our workload for a minute. So that one's have a little bit more space in between it.
So for every master class we do, well, except for you added some weeks to the soil balancing, they're all a 5-week course, and we just meet once a week for those 5 weeks, but everything is recorded, so you have access to any of the recordings, and you have access to the forum as well, so you can ask questions. All of our, in the basic training course, because it's a group learning environment, we are submitting our labs, and then we're posting them in the forum, and then we're having a conversation, outside of the classroom in the forum about the different results. And then at the end, we go into detail for each person about their particular context and what we would do different in the tracking and any corrections that need to be made. And then we do follow up with a one-on-one consulting as the final piece, just to make sure that you understand everything that went down, what needs to happen, answer any questions that you have lingering, anything that's specific that maybe you didn't want to address inside the class. But we always encourage everybody to put it in the forum because then we can all learn together. And it's a really great way to just build community and get to know like the different contexts of how we put these combinations of microbes, minerals, and nutrients together to get the result we want in any situation. So, so that's that. And then, what was the second part of the question?
Not trying to get left behind. Oh.
Do you take some downtime? We do take downtime in between rounds. We've done 3. This is our 3rd round of the basic training. And then this is the 2nd round of the microscope class. Yeah. So we do take some downtime, and we will continue to offer the classes. Yeah. So.
And the soil balancing one is kind of on a treadmill. It's just going to keep going. I'm doing the 2nd and 3rd round at the same time right now. I got some folks from Europe that we meet at a kooky hour, and that nobody else is available for. So that's round 3. In another few weeks, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks from now, we'll fire up the next round of the soil balancing and go. So just to kind of recap, what we do is, we meet once a week. We talk about everybody's data. We record class sessions on each topic, and you have access to those videos for a year. You have access to the forums for a year. And, our real goal is to legitimately empower people to have success in whatever their agricultural activity is, whether that's growing cannabis or growing lettuce or growing forest ecosystems or whatever. Yeah. Poo-pooing RO water. Interesting. We got some, we'll just give them a stage here. We want to be heard. Art Pryor. All that silica is doing is antagonizing your excess tap water carbonates. I don't know, man. Every time I do a water analysis, it comes back with no data for carbonate, so it's not measuring any carbonate. So I'm not sure if you mean bicarbonates in that sense, but maybe jump in if you want to clarify. And, you don't have to agree.
Yep.
Cannabis
Lots of
is
people
not,
do it.
yeah.
Different ways. This is just the way we do it. So.
But if you
And we don't poo-poo RO water. Sometimes that's absolutely appropriate.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have atrocious water and they can't install RO water, especially at the scale that they're operating at. So we just have to do what we can with what we're given in the context that we're given and execute.
Right.
So if you want to use RO water, go for it.
Yeah.
We have lots of people that use RO water, so that's not an issue. We're just saying that we're trying to be not just sustainable, but actually regenerative.
Right.
So if you can get away with not using RO water in your particular context and that's appropriate, we would advise that you try to do that. But if for you don't want to do that, that's absolutely, that's up to you. So we're just trying to be mindful. I just think it behooves us as humans on this planet to operate in a way that's actually regenerative. So especially with the drought that's going on, that's affecting us here in Utah, California, all across this West, we need to be very mindful of the salts that we use, the amount of water that we're using, how we cultivate the soil. And that's all we're saying.
Yeah.
So.
And we deal with a lot of crossover people. So I do take great pride in that we've done more salt-based conversions to living soil than any other people out there, save for probably Nick Tomasini. We've been at it a little bit longer, but we're probably neck and neck as far as doing that. And I take great pride in that. And people coming from the salt-based world have a compulsion to use reverse osmosis, like it is the first step. And we've taught 200,000 square foot hydroponic facilities how to not use RO and build fertility off of their city tap water, which is what we used to do in the hood.
So it can be done.
So it can be done. You don't have to use RO. Now, one of our students from last session has 396 parts per million of bicarbonates in their water, which is a legitimate problem. And we're now discussing if RO is an appropriate tool in that situation. But this just like immediate run to RO is not really the most intelligent approach. And you really should be doing analysis of your water. Now, in the case of like Santa Barbara, where the Dutch rose growers did such ridiculous contamination of the underground water, if you're trying to grow regulated cannabis, you will fail from the heavy metals from the flower gardeners in the area, and you are forced into RO. And if that's the case, then now it becomes a tool. So, but thanks for tuning in anyways. It gave us something to talk about that was pretty interesting, that maybe somebody worked. But you have to be aware that Lake Mead is almost to the level where it no longer functions as a power plant, which supplies water to Nevada, Arizona, and a lot of regions of California. And if you're just doing a 6-to-1 waste system on RO and it's not even necessary, like, you should at least take the steps to do a water analysis to see if it's even necessary. Some of the other problems with RO is if you're doing a blue mat system, the easiest way to guarantee a flood is to use RO water. So that doesn't work very well. There's also some problems with osmosis, and
there's just some things to consider with it.
And here's a good use for it. Sometimes there's so much chloride in your water that you're actually creating a bug problem with your water, and this is where you need to use RO. So our biggest use of reverse osmosis water is in foliar applications. Most people don't know, but you shouldn't really be applying water with more than 70 parts per million of chloride to the above ground biomass of plants. I saw one this week that had 300 parts per million of chloride. If you're using one of those Kangen machines, you're making it 200 parts per million of chloride. And y'all should maybe check into that. Because you might be killing bugs with pH, but I promise you are creating a nutrient imbalance if you're spraying 200 parts per million of chloride on your plant. So in that situation, RO for foliar would be a really good idea. So we're not poo-pooing. We are interested in educating the farmer on the obstacles of this journey so that you can have a successful run.
And what could be done? What are the options that they have? So
yeah. And if you're choosing a property, if you're in a fortunate position to be able to be looking at a property for the growing of any sort of crop, you should do a water analysis first, straight up. When is our next compost class, Sarah?
Okay, so the compost classes are, I didn't do them as a group class just because it's ridiculous to try to get people to coordinate around making compost just because not everybody can make it at the same time. It's just so tedious in trying to get the materials and round them up. So I've just recorded them as a video series. So they're in our under our Learn tab, under our learning modules. And it's just a video series. You can take it whenever you want to. I might actually create a forum for the class so that we can start discussing about composting so we can at least have some place to meet. Anyway, you can take the class anytime you want. It will come with our compost so that at least I know that you're getting the right microbes to be able to inoculate, because that's super important for having actually biocomplete compost at the end, and that's why you're taking the class. So you need to be able to make sure you have those microbes. I also teach you in the class how to go find the ones in your area. So I've talked about that on here as well. So.
What's your thought on dry farming? I think this is where, we got to avoid using hot words like climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it. I use the terms climate instability. It is undeniable at this point that the planet is changing. I'm not saying it's man-made. I'm not saying it's not man-made. I think it's at least a pole shift. And
we're at least contributing.
And we're at least doing some really dumb shit. Yep. And I say that in 2019 was when like the average suburbanite was like, the weather's just not the same anymore. And now by 2022, you have just like regular suburbanite family members that are like, I'm kind of worried about the environment. And you're like, good, welcome aboard. Now, what are we going to do about it? And, I think dry farming, I've seen some things where like even planting a tree, you should be looking at 1 to 2 zones into the colder direction, or some people believe the hotter direction. But nonetheless, people are saying if you're going to plant a tree, you need to look 1 to 2 zones outside of what you think your geographical location is, because of the changes that we're going into. So I think dry farming, if it's a region where they've historically dry farmed, you're starting to see less and less water. I would check into those zones. I know there's some people in, God, where the heck it was. Eric went to one of those farms. There's somebody in the regenerative community that literally is able to dry farm cannabis because the water table's so low, and it is kind of working there fairly well. So in certain situations, as context.
Low or so high?
I guess it would be high.
Yeah.
I guess the water table would be high. But nonetheless, they do it. I just think for a changing environment, I wouldn't bet my entire savings on it. I would try to have some level of irrigation. Like we had a conversation today with the European folks in the soil balancing class about the obstacles to establishing biology in a naturally irrigated dry land situation. You need some water to get microbes established. So you can't even...
And you need organic matter.
You
need organic matter. Organic matter, I cannot stress how important having organic matter. A lot of us are working in engineered soils, but for this context that we're talking about, native soils and dry farming, you've got to manage that organic matter. Mm-hmm. I mean, just having a 1% increase in organic matter will bring in and save any water that does come to the area to the tune, I think, of 20,000 gallons or something per percentage point of organic matter. So we've actually seen this play out, and we have a case study about the difference in microbial establishment from 2% organic matter to 3% organic matter, and it is profound. So I think that part of dry farming will need to be making sure that those farmers understand how to, use cover crops to their advantage, and whatever it is in their system appropriate to get that organic matter back into the soil. That's very crucial to saving water and capturing any water that does fall into the area. So
generally speaking, dryland farming moving into the future is one of the few things that does make me nervous. If you have the region and the property to do it, I say go for it. We should be conserving as much water as possible. But like even here in Utah, the everybody just keeps saying it's never like this, So that's going to get harder in the future. unfortunately. And, we might find ourselves in a climate crisis where like light depth tomatoes is like a real thing.
But it will be crucial to have success in dryland farming
Mm-hmm.
going forward in the future with these huge peaks and valleys of water in the system, and you've just got to have organic matter in there to even establish the microbes. They've got to have food and they've got to have water, and that organic matter is what brings that for them. So
there's a question here about the bioreactor series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I've done with the bioreactor is I've you can buy it alone, or you can buy it with in a bundle with the thermal composting class. So the bioreactor is just our approach to the Johnson-Su method. So we're using that style of composting, and we're just doing our little tweak on it to get the results that we're after. And so, you can buy it in a bundle, you can buy it by itself, or, whatever you'd like to do there. And then I do offer a composting mentorship, so that you can go whenever you want to go, and you just, book a session with me for a certain amount of hours. So,
How would whoops, that was not the one I wanted. How would you get a second opinion on compost quality?
I would send it in to somebody who knows how to, that you are confident in their microscopy skills, that you can get a read on what's happening in that compost, and that's been doing it for, a bit, to be able to tell you, what's going on, and maybe give you some advice on
Are you one of those
numbers.
people?
I'm definitely one of those people. I won't say I'm the only one. I'm definitely not the only one, but I definitely would be able to do that for you. Yeah. I think it's always a good idea to get a second opinion and make sure that anytime you're learning microscopy, it's a good idea to get a second opinion. Am I seeing what you're seeing, and what are these numbers mean? How can I make improvements? Those kinds of things. And so that's what the composting mentorship is for, and also you can do the bioassays. It's a great way.
And I think it's a good point to bring up. It's that those of us, I don't know if they still do this, but like us original diehard soil food webbies, we would calibrate each other. So you calibrate all of your agricultural tools. We would calibrate our microscope skills. So we would take a sample, we would send it to a couple other soil food web grads, we would all count it, and then we would reconvene and talk about it. And I think the school's gotten kind of so big, I don't know if they really do that anymore. We haven't done it in a bit, but we did this within the last couple years with Nick Tomasini and Eli.
Well, and we've calibrated with Elaine herself, so that's part of being in the
I was just laughing. I didn't mean to jump in, but I was just laughing because on our first few jobs, we were, I'm always nervous. Am I doing this accurately? I'm being paid to do this. I need to do this well. And most of the original farms that first hired us would send a sample to Elaine directly and see if we even knew what we were talking about. So the first qualification I got was from a farm that they sent it to Dr. Elaine, and he was really not on board with this whole tech. His son was talking him into it, and the father was pretty resistant, and he sent in the samples. He came in almost kind of bewildered that the three of us had come within a few percentage points on the same soil sample of what Dr. Lane counted. So from then I had pretty strong confidence that so we've been done calibrated. Here's an interesting comment from David King. When he started growing cannabis, he was an 8B. 95, they changed it to 9B.
Wow.
Now they're considering, so is that getting colder or hotter? I don't really pay attention to the zones very much because I've just been a Southern California guy. So I don't know what that means.
There's a question above that statement about RO water and compost.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. So, no, we don't. So this is one of the reasons why we poo-poo RO water from a biological consideration is there's an osmosis issue. Yeah. And so just like drinking RO water isn't the best for your body unless you're trying to strip it of things. So if you're trying to detox, I guess it's a good way, but you kind of arbitrarily strip electrolytes and other minerals and things like that. In regards to soil organisms, it affects the way they're, what'd you call it? What's their shell? Their
this is cellular membrane. We call it lysing. So they just, from an osmotic standpoint, they rupture. Yeah.
So you're having a certain amount of, I'm not saying it kills everything like neem oil or nothing, but it does reduce populations by a certain percentage simply through osmotic pressure. And that water that is carrying very low parts per million has a very low osmotic pressure, I guess you could say. And so until that equalizes by killing organisms, it kills organisms.
Yeah.
So
And
no.
yeah, yeah.
Now, is well water typically enough? Well, it depends. If you have 400 parts per million of sodium in your water, you're going to have a hard time composting. But when you finally do, you're going to have very
Salty compost.
salty compost. We did kind of a crazy thing, and we stopped filtering out the chlorine and just made chlorine tolerant organisms, so we didn't have to deal with it. So we took kind of a crazy approach and just said, what happens if we don't filter it out? Well, they evolve, and they did evolve. Yeah, man. So it is getting kind of interesting out there.
Yeah.
So again, just to recap, master classes are coming back around. We got a few more spots in the basic training. There's some open spots in the microscope class, and we will have some open spots in the mineral balancing class when that fires up again in about 3 to 4 weeks.
Yes.
And if you're interested, just jump on the website, click apply, fill it out, jump it on in. One of the things I'm really getting excited about is, some of the badass mofos is coming out of the soil balancing class. So,
Yeah, we've been impressed with the
Been
caliber
very
of people
impressed.
that are in the class and the questions that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, what's inspiring is now you're getting, veteran growers that are like, now I know what I'm doing when I'm mineral balancing, and I see the results, and I taste it in my buds, and it's just,
Yeah, we got some growers group members that have been around a while and been maintaining those grow logs for a few years now, and it's really cool shit, man.
Yeah.
I really like seeing people have those moments. I used to coach sports back in the day, and I mean, it's cooler to me to have somebody go out with what you've taught them and do more than you've done, and that's really kind of where we're at. Sarah and I obviously run a consulting business, and that's important to us, to our income, but we can really only maintain so many clients at one time, and this
And
whole
teaching-
soul food web thing is going nuts.
And teaching right now, that it's not enough to know, you need to know how.
Yeah.
And that's and do it, do the work, and restore the soil and get the results and see the difference for yourself, and then other people will see it, and then it gets out into the collective conscious that this is a thing. We can actually do something much more profound than what we ever knew. And so, but that's my opinion.
Yeah.
So and we'd like it to be, like it to get out there. That
We
it's a
would
thing.
like this to work so the planet remains hospitable for human life. And if you're going to do that, you're going to need to learn how to manage soil chemistry, which is getting harder and harder. We're the numbers we see coming off the agricultural landscapes are just insane. And it's going to take some really professional approaches to correct the soil chemistry that's been damaged from the Green Revolution. And humans kind of rely on food, and so we love growing dope, obviously, but we like growing medicine too.
Yep.
And so a couple other questions on some compost. I guess I'll answer these before we wrap up.
Is it okay to bring cold compost? Just yard scraps, leaves, grass.
Indoors. So I think this is a question about, is it okay to bring bugs inside my grow facility? I read that as...
well, cold compost, I'm thinking you're meaning what we would refer to as static composting.
Yeah.
So it's no turn method, and you're just kind of lasagna layering, and it's as long as it's all broken down, and it's... So what we would say the safe thing to do with that style of composting is make sure that it's been broken down for a year. That's the safe thing to do as far as pathogens and things like that. It really needs to be composting for a year. Now, if worms have been going through your compost and turning it through and really making a thorough job of it, then they will handle that for you, and that can be a faster turnaround. So hopefully that answers your question there.
Yeah. I agree. We've worked with some CBD growers. We've worked with some people curing cancer. We've done some crazy stuff with the medicinal aspect, veterans, all that stuff. I'm not gonna lie. The thing that I enjoy most is growing some sort of GMO variant and rolling up a joint, giving it one of these new hash princesses that don't smoke flower, that think their tolerance is through the roof, and they take a couple puffs off a half-gram joint and they're literally laying on the floor. Go, how does that work? That's my favorite thing ever. Ever. Ends the argument right now. So, did your experience, this feels like a trap question to get a censor, but I'm going to throw it up anyways. But just
well, what do you guys think? Do you think that this would affect our
Did your-
opinion on this